We've now written tests for views, URL paths, and templates, and those are generally all together. And we've also seen a few tests for models. However, there are moments where you may be writing tests in Django for any of these things, and tests may not be the right way to go about it. So in this lesson, we're going to go and see Django's check framework system so that we can see that we have the ability to enforce behavior and guarantee it for our users or for the business without actually dealing with the test framework. So let's jump straight into it. To sort of demonstrate the difference, I'm back in my testmodels.py file, and you can see that I've added a new test called test string. And I'm simply asking, do the tags clearly represent themselves? If I go and I get an object, and I'm creating an object in the database here, does it clearly show what it is? By default, tags don't, or models, I should say, don't, right? We generally need to write a stir method, or a dunder stir method, or double underscore stir method, if you will, to be able to get that behavior so that when we're interacting with any of these objects in the Python interpreter or Jupyter notebooks or wherever it is on the command line, we want to see something other than this is simply a tag, right? So to do that, we would have to write a method to do that. The thing is that we're not really interested in enforcing this behavior on just the tag, right? We really want to enforce this behavior on every single one of our models. The thing is that means that we have to always remember to write this test for each and every single one of our models, and that's not great. That's a little bit tedious. Now, we'll talk later about the fact that you can use some of the test frameworks out there, notably PyTest, which comes with some nice parameterization techniques. If that's not a mouthful, I don't know what is. But out of the box, Django doesn't give you any of the tools necessary to do that. So we're gonna keep moving ahead as if we were just writing tests with this, ignoring some of the abilities that PyTest or Hypothesis, which we'll see soon, might be able to give you. And we're just going to say, well, how would I handle this? I wanna be able to say each one of my models is going to do this. Well, Django checks to the rescue. So I'm going to quit out of this. I'm going to move into the future. And let's go see the code that I wrote in config checks. So you can see that I am pulling in from Django's core, from the check system, tags. And this is not the tag that we've written. This is a means of noting, giving extra information about the check that we're going to write. I'm pulling in a warning, and this is a warning that we will show our users in the event that our check fails. And then I'm registering this check so that Django knows that that it exists. Now, I'm also pulling in the app configuration that Django uses. Every time that Django starts, Django goes through, it looks through our installed apps, and it says, well, what are the apps that are there? And it then builds out these objects within its memory to have more information about the apps. And so we're going to leverage this piece of usually internal Django logic and to be able to make assertions about the various models in all of our apps. So you can see that I've written this method here called check_model_stir, and some of the checks will give us the list of app configs, but sometimes it's not specified, and so we're simply going to say, well, if it's not specified, we're going to have a default of none. And then, maybe we'll get a bunch of keywords, but for our check, we're actually not going to worry about it. Now, we want to first sort of figure out, have we been given a list here? If we have been given that list of app configs, we're just going to return that and save it to config. But if we haven't been passed a list of app configs, well, we're going to use our import over here to get all of the app configs in our Django project. So this simply goes through the installed apps, looks at all of the apps that were registered in installed apps, and then gives us that list of configs. We can then use these configs down here, and for each one of the apps in config that is not part of Django contrib, right? So we're trying to say for all of the ones that are local. Now this isn't going to work fully. For instance, we're pulling in REST framework. It's not something that we would want to guarantee behavior about, but I'm not explicitly excluding it here. But this list might need to change if we pull in a third-party package that doesn't have the string dunder method defined on all of its models. But ignoring that for the moment, what this effectively does is say, for any of the apps in this list of configs, I would like to go through and get all of the models in that application, and then for all of those models, I would like to identify them if the model does not have dunder stir defined on it in the dunder dict. So this will then give us a list of models as problem models. What that means is down here, for each model in problem model, we are going to return a warning, and so we're returning a list of warnings, where we simply say, all the models must have a stir method. You have to define dunder stir on these models, and it will note which model is needed. So let's see this real quickly in action. I'm going to come over to here, and I'm going to run docker compose, run, removing the container after I'm done with it, Django, and then within Django, I'm going to run manage.py check. And you can see right there, we have a warning. Tag does not define the dunder stir, and so we get a little warning about it. And so what we can do is we can move into the future. And now, all I've done, if we just show it here, is I've just defined a dunder stir method, and which simply shows self.name. Now, our check doesn't really make sure that the function works, right, or the method. So it doesn't go ahead and run it. It doesn't say, oh yes, this is a working method and it shows what you want. And so our test, which you can run in exactly the same way, will go ahead and, whoops, I'm going to actually cancel that. I said I'm going to cancel that and just run it for the test app. Our test will pass because we have written a method that gives us back the value that we want. So checks can be used in tandem with tests, right? You are guaranteeing certain behavior with a test, but having the check to make sure that you remember to write it can be quite powerful. Whether you decide to actually write that test is somewhat up to you. But now you have the tools to decide how you want to go about guaranteeing the behavior for your system.